Quack-a-doodle-doo. What is up, fellow birds of the spiral? It's your friend and pal Fearsome here, with a video to answer a question I really don't see very many other Pirate 101 or Wizard101 YouTubers attempting to answer, and that um, is Pirate 101 and Wizard 101, are they effective story-based games? And I'm going to be sharing with you guys my answer and the reason for my answer. Now, you're seeing footage here from Wizard101 PvP, Magus PvP to be more specific, but the footage does not actually come from myself. It comes from another YouTuber called Dakota Earthhorn. I'll go ahead and link the video down below in the description. I just want to point something out. And this is the reason why I'm not going to be making a video about Wizard101 PvP anytime real soon. Because I really don't consider myself to be very much of an expert at it right now, and I don't want to give you guys misleading information. Therefore, I'm actually consulting PvP experts, and Dakota has been, very helpful with the pet side of things, and has also suggested a couple things for my tournament. So, being said, I figured it'd be worth a shout out, and since I needed some Wiz footage for this beginning part of my video, I thought, what would be a better way to do that than to show one of his Magus 2v2 matches. So, being said, let's get right into the video. Now, another reason I'm making this video is from some of the, most frustrating and obvious, things that people have been saying on the forums and on Twitter. People who really should not have an opinion at all, and who are like, well, I don't have, like a problem in whatever I'm doing because the stakes aren't high enough. So why don't we screw people over, who actually care about the game? And that's the case for Shadow Magic. And so I thought I'd share this tweet, and Ratbeard basically owning this this random WizTuber here. Uh, that way, not only will you know who to follow in order to find out what's happening with the game, you'll also get a little bit of context. Um, so that being said, yeah, we should probably continue. Let us actually talk about the story this time, and why focusing on the story might actually be a very bad idea. So I decided what would be a better way to talk about the storyline, having a good old-fashioned PvP match going in the background. So I'm going to go ahead and play this tournament match. It's the 3v3 Spiral Cup. I plan on hosting every year, and the goal is to basically outdo all the other Kingsisle tournaments in, a one-year event. And it's going to be geared towards serious PvP players who want to play, and they don't want to deal with all the rules and um, basically, bad prizes. They want good rewards, and they don't want bad rules. Okay, so that's basically the focus of this tournament. It is a 4v4 tournament because it reduces the effects of RNG due to the law of large numbers. Okay, so that's a little bit about this tournament. I'm just going to let you guys enjoy this match while I talk about the story-based factors of this game, and I promise you guys I'll do a video about Pirate 101 and Wizard 101 and their problems with their PvP focus in both games. So expect that in a part 2 next week. Alright, so does Pirate 101 do a good job of its story-based factors in the game? The answer is no. And the reason why, and how I will explain the reason why, is by using two games that I really enjoyed to play, especially as a kid. And those games are Age of Empires 2 and Heroes of Might and Magic 4. Now, I did play Age of Empires 1, which was, quite a bit more clunky and honestly wasn't as good of a game. Age of Mythology, ditto on that, and Age of Empires 3, okay? Which they all had decent stories and stuff, and that's the reason why I'm making this video, because I know what a good story-based game looks like. So, yeah. Alright, so I'm going to go ahead and start by talking about Heroes of Might and Magic 4. Because I think they did a really good job at this. So, they had, six different factions. There was like chaos, there was order, there was life, there was necromancy, and there were like a couple of others whose names I forgot because it's been such a long time since I played that game. But each campaign had like a different writer, a different style. Each faction had different goals. You basically had, Order, who, they were colonizers, so to speak. They were, a little more artistically appealing, a little less destructive than the other factions. That was basically my favorite side to play as. And then, of course, you had Might. It was basically a small tribe of, I guess you call them Indians, but they looked, more Caucasian. But essentially that, and they were basically fighting for survival, and they had a few very strong heroes, and that's why they were called Might. Ditto on many of the other classes, like you have this nature faction called Life as well, and or Nature, I forgot which. But each faction had different characteristics. It was a different campaign with different goals, different objectives in mind. In Wizard 101 and Pirate 101, you're either in faction wizards or faction pirates, and there's nothing more to it. You play the exact same, campaign. You play, an exact same storyline. You maybe have a different companion that says things slightly different, but, all in all, nothing changes when you play, a swashbuckler at first, and then you decide to play a musketeer, Nothing changes story-wise, and that's the reason why this game has such little replay value. That's one of the reasons why, and I'm going to go ahead and get into some of the other reasons. Now, let's talk about Age of Empires. Now, that is, more and more of a pure story-based game, so to speak. Now, it does have quite a bit to do with PvP as well. Probably more so than Heroes of Might and Magic. But still, the reason why Age of Empires was such a great game is because, once again, they did have multiple writers. It was all based on real historical stories, okay? Albeit they did put their artistic twist onto it to make it, a little more Hollywood-like, so to speak. But it was a great story for that reason. You had a lot of people, a vast community who all contributed in basically writing the stories for this campaign. So it was several different writers, once again. And each faction, was a different nation. They had a different location. They had different customs. They even, like hired out, people from, those particular countries to do some of the voice acting in some cases. Or, they had like guest, historians and stuff like that. That way, they were sure to have a very diverse campaign, and that helped a lot with that story. Now, that being said, there was nothing in that game having to do with gear drops. Okay, you started the game and you never had to worry about gear hence then. It was an RTS game, which means that it had, more to do with commanding an army and the units you recruited inside the actual combat itself, was, basically what the game was, more about how you controlled those and how you ran an in-game economy. So that also helped. Because you were able to see things more from a third-person view instead of a first-person view. And, well, more so, I would say. So you were able to see like a larger picture. So it was great for telling a story, especially one that's based in history. Now, Heroes of Might and Magic is kind of a balance between what they have in Wizard and Pirate 101 and what they have in Age of Empires. Now, before I continue to talk about this game in relationship to Pirate, Wizard 101, and Age of Empires, I just really needed to warn you guys to stay about as far away from the expansion packs as you possibly can. It's an old familiar story of a company making a pretty decent game and then, throwing out a bunch of cash grabs, so to speak. And the picture you're seeing right now is a character that they made in the expansion pack called Spasmaticus, and no, I am not making this up. It is corny as heck, and it really did do a lot to ruin the series. So stay away from the expansion packs like they're the actual plague. They're horrible. They're god awful. Like, ugh. Now, in Heroes of Might and Magic, there's gear, yes, and it does add some, some interesting elements to the game. Some of them were actually kind of broken, let's be honest, but at least Heroes of Might and Magic got the story well done, and it was a single player game for the most part. That's how most people played it. But the reason but the reason why gear worked in that game and why it was not monotonous, why it wasn't, why people didn't dread gear is because gear dropped the first time you fought a boss. Everyone could get the gear. It wasn't exclusive, and you didn't have to farm. Didn't have to farm a particular boss or particular dungeon that was particularly easy yet monotonous to play through. Right? You got everything the first time, and the bosses were actually somewhat challenging and fun to fight against. Okay? So that was the difference. So that's one point in which Wizard101 and Pirate101 falls flat in its face. It focuses more on grinding out monotonous bosses that add nothing to the story value, and hence people who care about story find the game somewhat frustrating. Next, I like to talk about the AI. Okay, since story-based games, don't really usually involve much PvP themselves, it's very important that you have somewhat decent AI. Well, in Wizard101 and Pirate101, you have AI that does stuff like runs into bombs when you place them on the ground, runs into traps that are in plain daylight, right? Does a bunch of stuff that makes no sense, and there's no like explanation for why the creatures that you're fighting are so stupid. There's no logical explanation. They don't really explain why they're so brain dead. Um, so that does take a little bit away from the story. Like they just, drop that out of the sky. Oh, and by the way, the creatures in this game are, really bad for no reason, right? It's the reason why this game cannot be sustained as uh, a story-based game purely, because those creatures are just bad and there's no real reason for it. It's kind of like having a body randomly drop from a ceiling, that's actually like a story technique. It's kind of like a bad story technique that some writers do. I've taken classes on like writing short stories and novels and stuff, and I actually wrote a novel in high school. It wasn't very good though. Um, but yeah, that's one element. Definitely. And you have these quests in the game, like let's go ahead and get one of the college professors dry cleaning orders from the dry cleaners and bring it back to him. And you have like a lot of quests, like, oh, let's defeat like 10 Amber Horde. You know, I'm trying to think of the guys. Amber Horde warriors. In Pirate101, and they fight the exact same way. It's just monotonous, pointless combat. And nothing fun or interesting ever happens ever again, when you fight those people. Yeah, they ask you to fight them over and over again, sometimes with ridiculous drop rates on the defeat and collect quests. So that's not fun at all, especially if you're into the story. But some people are willing to do it for the PvP, but honestly, if you want to do that for the story, I don't know what's wrong with you, but that's not my problem once again. And it's the reason why most people would not consider, Wizard101 and Pirate101 to be a very good story-based game. All right, so here's the last point I'm going to make. Not meaning to beat to death a dead horse, but let's talk about a story element called unpredictability. So, one of the reasons why some stories, particularly some characters like the Joker in in Batman: The Dark Knight Rises, the one played by Keith Ledger, why he's so good is because he poses a lot of questions that actually have no good solid answers. There are many possibilities, and we all ask ourselves, like, what's wrong with that guy? He's clearly crazy, and that's why he's doing this stuff, but why? Like, he always tells a different story about how he got the scars on his face, for example, right? Really good movie, by the way, if you haven't watched The Dark Knight Rises. Uh, Maybe I'll play a clip here. Matter of fact, I am going to play a clip. I'm actually going to play two clips. Not only does it make you ask questions, but it also points out a lot of irony. For example, the villain in this particular story is very similar to the hero. He's also a vigilante of sorts who points out the flaws in corruption and hypocrisy in society. So at some points in the story, you actually do, emotionally connect, but at other parts, it's clear to see that the guy's crazy, and why he's crazy is a mystery. Those are, like questions that never really get answered. Like, there are several different answers that are, like potentially there that get presented throughout the story, and that's what makes it interesting. When you just answer the questions, it loses. It makes the story lose quality. Yes, it should focus on, delivering a particular message, right? But it should, also um, it should in a certain way be a little philosophical. It should pose questions that really can't be answered. And that's really what makes a great story. Now, what I'm about to show you may be considered a little bit dark, and if that's not for you, you may want to skip to 21 minutes and 30 seconds in this video. I'll also put a timestamp in the description of this video.
Yo, Gamble, somebody here for you. They say they've just killed the Joker.
They brought the body. So, dead? That's 500.
How about a lie?
You wanna know how I got these scars? My father was a drinker and a fiend. And one night, he goes off crazier than usual. Mommy gets the kitchen knife to defend herself. He doesn't like that. Not one bit. So, me watching, he takes the knife to her, laughing while he does it. He turns to me, and he says, "Why so serious?" He comes at me with the knife. "Why so serious?" He sticks the blade in my mouth. "Let's put a smile on that face." And... why so serious? Now, our operation is small, but there's a lot of potential for aggressive expansion. So which of you fine gentlemen would like to join our team? Oh, there's only one spot open right now, so we're gonna have tryouts. Make it fast. Do you know where I can find Harvey? I need to talk to him about something. Just something little, huh? No.
What's going on out there? Wayne!
Thank God you've got a panic room.
Can't wait!
Oh, you gotta be kidding me.
You know, I'll settle for his loved ones.
We're not intimidated by thugs.
You know, you remind me of my father. I hated my father.
Okay, stop.
Well, hello, beautiful. You must be Harvey's squeeze.
And you are beautiful.
Well, you look nervous. Is it the scars? You want to know how I got them? Come here. Hey. Look at me. So I had a wife, beautiful, like you, who tells me I worry too much, who tells me I ought to smile more, who gambles and gets in deep with the sharks. Hey, one day they carve her face. We have no money for surgeries. She can't take it. I just want to see her smile again. Hmm? I just want her to know that I don't care about the scars. So, I stick a razor in my mouth and do this to myself. And you know what? She can't stand the sight of me. She leaves. Now I see the funny side. Now I'm always smiling. A little fight in you. I like that. And you're gonna love me.
Drop the gun.
Oh, sure. You just take off your little mask and show us all who you really are. Hmm?
Let her go.
Very poor choice of words.
At any rate, it's a good movie if you ever want to watch, a movie with a good story that's full of a lot of irony and mystery surrounding a lot of the characters. That, also does give a lot of details as well. The characters are incredibly well developed in this particular story. Not only do they focus on the hero of the story, in the case of Pirate 101, the guy who quests up, your pirate, but they also, focus on uh, the opponent, the uh, the the Joker, that guy. Um, there are always so many twists and turns where everything is sort of explainable, but at the same time, there are many possibilities, and you don't know what this guy is going to do next. Now, in a way, PvP does offer this, like you're always facing new players and, everything they do is somewhat explainable, but at the same time, they're always surprising you, and that's the beauty of PvP. Now, the same sort of thing to some extent, especially when you read a story for the first time, exists as well. It adds a certain amount of novelty and a certain amount of enjoyment to the game. Now, say the PvP for my next video, but the point, still stands. A good story does rely a lot on the novelty and the unpredictability of what some of the characters do. At the same time, it does rely on, a somewhat realistic universe with basic rules in place at the same time. So it's a good balance of those, and that's what I'm talking about here. Just a second, um, but Pirate 101 at one point had that. They had questions that weren't really answered, like apparently the Armada had some rat, and he had been around for quite a while, and for several years he was sending out mechanical birds, and he put like some message on the Rosetta Stone. You found it, and then you found this guy called Meowiarty who was able to decipher it. And the thing about Meowiarty is he, subtly admits that, he'll be out of that prison very soon and that he purposefully got captured. So that poses many questions that don't have any good solid answers. And what Pirate 101 did wrong was they rushed an update and basically they gave rather obvious clunky answers to all of those questions, and hence why the story was so bad. A bad ending can ruin a potentially good story. Doesn't matter how good the beginning of the story was if the end of the story was done poorly, and Pirate 101 is an example of that. Now, as for Wizard 101, they had way too many arcs. Like, you defeat one person, then you defeat Morganthe, which is basically the same thing as Malistaire, except it's a woman version. Like, it's kind of pointless. Like, the second arc especially was really boring and monotonous, and I hated it. The newer ones are a little bit better, but I honestly don't dig Wiz very much anyway. Um, so maybe my opinion's a little bit biased. But one thing is for sure, they rushed the Valencia Part 2 update, and it really ruined the entire story. Any redeeming qualities that it had. So, well, I'll probably like play the outro or something and leave it at that. It's been your friend and pal Fearsome here with yet another Pirate 101 video because goodness knows I love this game.